y'all. Welcome to another episode of Soccer for Us, the third episode of this show in which we have talked about the U.S. men's national team winning the Concacaf Nations League. That's right. It's 3 in a row for the USMNT, 3 for 3, undefeated, whatever you want to call it. The U.S. men's national team has, for the third time, won the Concacaf Nations League, a tournament that feels like it was made almost just for us to win. Here to revel in this glory is my friend and yours, Thomas, a.k.a. US Keeper. Thomas, we've won it 3 times in a row, so that means we've graduated CONCACAF, correct?
I don't think graduated. I think we need to have, more consistent performances and more dominant performances on both home and road soil. But it's always nice to get a trophy, even though it probably wasn't the prettiest way to do it.
I think that's the best way to encapsulate this particular edition of the CONCACAF Nations League for the U.S. men's national team. It was inconsistent, but it's still the best in the region. Because while we did end up winning the whole thing, I think it's fair to say this tournament gave us a lot of concern along the way. And in fact, there were multiple games in which we just didn't look very good. A little bit of a recap, obviously, the U.S. men's national team started this tournament in the quarterfinals already. We did not have to play a group stage. We drew Trinidad and Tobago, beat them at home, and then lost on the road. Now, at home, actually, I thought was a little bit more of a concerning game because it took us forever to break down Trinidad. On the road, yes, we lost, but I don't know, to me, we were up 1-0 and looked pretty good until Sergiño Dest did his, threw a temper tantrum that got him booted from the stadium. But then you saw in this particular finals weekend, Thomas, a game against Jamaica that was very aggravating, frustrating, and disappointing to watch. And then paired with a pretty dominant win over Mexico. But we won the thing. So it's kind of hard to take away that celebration to actually do some real criticism of the team.
Yeah, I think reflection is important here. And I think within that reflection, we have to really look at, fine, we accomplished the goal of winning it, but let's really look back and say, geez, were we not prepared? Were we not motivated? What caused the Jamaica game to take so long to kind of get going in that match? I mean, because they got lucky. I mean, to tie that match,
Yeah.
When they did. So I think it's that reflection is important. And I think the US really, I mean, the slow starts are kind of not a great thing, but I will say in big tournaments, you have run up, right? You're going to have friendlies leading up to these tournaments. So hopefully you can knock some of the rust off, because I will say the challenging piece is this, is though, it's been 120 some odd days since this team has been together. Right. So while, other teams do it and other teams perform, it is something that it seems like takes a little bit longer for this group to kind of
Totally
find that cohesion between the different international camps.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's also fair to say that other teams seem to pull it off. But yeah, I mean, this team, especially if you're looking at a team mostly comprised of European-based club players, they arrived in camp at best on Monday. That was when most of them got in and were fully in camp. So you're talking about Tuesday, Wednesday to prepare. Maybe at most you got 3 days to prepare for this. Now, I don't think that excuses a lackluster and lethargic performance against Jamaica, but I think it can excuse not fully functioning or firing on all cylinders compared to a Jamaica team that, we'll talk about this when we get into the game, but overall, Jamaica was very content, especially once they got their goal and once we got into that second half, to sit in a very low block. And maybe it's just a matter of, again, to evaluate Greg, his tactics are more complicated. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that his tactics are more complicated than what Jaime Helgerson deployed with Jamaica.
Yeah, I think. I mean, yeah, again, we haven't seen a change in that, right? I don't know what Greg did in his reflection of 6 months and then throughout the Gold Cup, but the reflection was, didn't provide anything, right? Because we haven't seen any real difference, of significance, when it comes to the matches you have to win, right? Like he's going back to the same things he's comfortable with, and so that's concerning to me because I want to see this team dominate a Jamaica. I want to see them dominate
Yes.
these even these top end Concacaf teams, right? Whoever they are, they should be easily dominating them. And again, don't let certain numbers like possession, you know, you know, you know, confuse you because if you see their possession, there's not a lot of purpose with that. And so that's just where some of those, statistics really don't add up to anything when it comes to actual results. But I mean, they did have moments. And again, my problem with Greg is that he can adjust. Well, but the problem is like you can adjust and that's fine, but you're adjusting because they have adjusted, right? You got to go in with a game plan versus that opponent and either adjust in the moment or adjust at halftime to be able to counter that. And Greg's decent at doing that, but sometimes I just don't think he's prepared,
Yeah.
right, in doing that because it's Jamaica. It's not a team, it's not a top tier team, right? You've got to go and dominate.
I do want to make one just overarching point, and it's that I do think it's fair to say we have established ourselves as, and I understand the way games are still a critique of this, but I think we've established ourselves as the best team in Concacaf. I don't think that's really up for debate.
No, I mean, I think there's the best talent, the best player collection of players. I wouldn't say the best coach though, and I think that's where it goes from like, yep,
Yeah.
we're the best, but couldn't we be better, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's where I'm always falling. Couldn't we be better?
And I think it's also then fair to say, Thomas, that while yes, we're the best in CONCACAF, the joke of we're graduating, that was a tweet from Henry Bushnell, but like the real test comes in the non-CONCACAF opponents where Greg has not looked fantastic consistently. And we get a chance to test ourselves against that in the summer with, Copa America, where we'll have at least two, if not three, non-CONCACAF opponents.
Right, and I think that's that. Look, he might have, in his he might have graduated, but he could fail out pretty quickly if he can't figure out how to beat some of these CONMEBOL teams. They're playing Bolivia and they're playing Uruguay, and I think those opponents really are ones that are going to be good showcase. One is a weaker one, and one is a stronger one. Um, and it's going to be telling because they just play different styles. I mean, the U.S. has more of a history of playing these CONMEBOL teams over the last, couple, cycle plus, and it's a good opportunity. And if they get out of the group, which they should, then they're going to be playing a Brazil or likely Colombia in that knockout stage. So you're going to have to really, have game plans, have tactics, whatever it is, to make sure you can play against them at the highest levels. So.
And that's, I think, just what we want to see from this team is that proof that they can do it. Let's put that to the side and focus on these two games that we did play, though. The first one in the semifinal, the U.S. saw a depleted Jamaica team without a few of their biggest stars in what we all felt should be a easy win. Quickly became a hole to dig out of, but the U.S. does end up winning 3-1 over Jamaica. The starting lineup was Matt Turner in goal, Joe Scally at right back, Chris Richards and Miles Robinson at center back, Jedi Robinson on the left. The midfield three was Musa, McKinney, Tillman, with Musa kind of as the most defensive of those three. And the front line was Weah on the right, Balogun central, and Pulisic up top. I will say, I think when this lineup came out, to me, it was the most logical lineup. I think with Dest out, putting Scally in as a natural right back replacement made sense. And I think while it's fair that, I don't think Gio Reyna is fully on minutes like restriction. We all know that he hasn't been playing a whole lot. and there were instances of slight injuries with Nottingham. So I don't think that starting Tillman against Jamaica is like an egregious flaw or that Greg made. But what did you feel about this lineup?
Yeah, I think it's probably what the best we're going to have out there realistically. I mean, obviously, I would have loved to have Reina starting, but I was excited to see Tillman start right with this group and get some exposure to that, right? And he's a young player. I think that's important. And again, in a match you should kind of easily win, it would be good to kind of see him, in his best position. I don't know if that best position is that attacking midfielder yet for this group. I don't know that. It's definitely still to be determined.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is just that Tillman, a starting lineup with Tillman should do just fine against Jamaica. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's the thing. That's why it's a good opportunity to see, how he fits in with, again, most of a group here of players. So to see, what his role, how he fits in, how they're going to use them. And I think that's something you have to evaluate after the match and say, yeah, this went well, this didn't went well. Maybe we need to, do it this way because different collections of players are as we totally seen can really increase or decrease the quality of play pretty drastically with this group. So that's a little concerning because if we are missing players due to injury, how are those other players going to step in certain areas, right? Certain areas that are fine, other areas like where's the attack, where's the creativity, right? And I think that's something that we need to see more of. And I'm hopefully with the two friendlies headed into Copa America, we're going to see different combinations of players kind of working together to see how they pair with one another.
Well, unfortunately, not even 1 minute into this game, this starting 11 gives up a goal. Jamaica goes long on the opening kick. They win a throw in, and then they throw it into our left corner to Bobby Reed. He and Jedi kind of duel for a ball that I got to be honest, I think Jedi should have won. He doesn't. Reed sneaks by him, floats across back post where Gregory Lee heads it home off of Matt Turner's hands. Not a great way to start a game in any of these things. Even if the goal isn't scored, I think it's fair. This is a bad start to a game that you should come out ready to dominate. More on that point later. But I think the question is what went wrong and who's to blame?
For that play, I think there's it's just several areas to evaluate. I mean, the throw.
A lot of people messed up. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, they did. I mean, the throw was a set play, obviously from Jamaica. And as you said, Jedi messed on that. Turner was not positioned well. I mean, he came across the box and he's 1 foot in the goal, so that's a bad position to be in. And when even if he gets in his position, that ball's probably still in the net, even if he stops it, right? Because he's right there. And Scally also gets beat on the back end too. So there's a lot going on there. And again, but it's poor form to just start off like with really no, I don't know, urgency, right? And so because I think that's part of it. And then I think that then they're kind of progressed from there, and they just kind of went into their game plan with no real difference of urgency, in their tactics or style of play.
Yeah, I mean that was the problem, right? Is you gave them the exact thing they wanted, which was an early goal. Now they did something that it seems like every team in the world does now, except for us, weirdly, is a pass back that they go long and they send a bunch of people forward. Um, that should not be surprising. It shouldn't be surprising that Jamaica played a direct ball either. And then to add to that, the fact that we again give up a really good opportunity to an opponent off of a throw in seems to be a recurring theme for this team. Now, I think Jedi needs to win that duel. I think Scally and Weah did not identify who needed to mark who, but I will take Matt Turner to task. And again, this is one of those like it's early in the game. Why aren't we keyed in? But he did not shuttle across his goal effectively. And the fact that he's saving that ball basically inside the goal mouth, inside the goal, falling backwards almost is a problem. A lot of people messed up on this play, but I think overall, as you pointed out, it's that urgency. We need to come out hunting, ready to dominate, and not complacent, just expecting the other team to not show up.
Yeah, and I think when you look at that urgency, I think everyone owns responsibility for it, right? The coaches, the players, in terms of that, right? Because I mean, it's a simple concept. You practice like you play at a high level at all times. Because if you don't do that, then you're gonna get caught off guard from time to time. And good that happens to good and great teams from time to time. I don't. This is not a great team, unfortunately, right at the moment. They have the ability to be a great team, but I think I think that's to be determined. You can't continue having these poor starts and then hoping to kind of come back. You got to again come out firing, come out with that intensity, no matter who the opponent is, right? And then and own it and kind of be scary about it, right? Like because that's the thing. Like you've got to really go out there and just you know put that pressure on whatever it is and do that instead of just saying, yeah, we'll break them down, we'll get a goal 30 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it is, and we'll get the win, right? Because that's really kind of how he felt that match went, right? Because even as a fan, I'm sitting there and I didn't really get started getting nervous until we got probably to like the 80th minute, right?
Right.
Right. I'm like, they'll do it, they'll figure it out. I'm like 80 minutes, like, okay, they're not there yet. So like, because they didn't have urgency, I didn't feel like they had a, you know, to fight as hard as they did to get to that point. So
Yeah, I think the rest of the first half was frustrating for sure, but I'm with you that I wasn't super concerned because as much as there was consternation about the way we played and it was slow, it was plodding a lot of the times. We didn't not create good goal scoring opportunities. We had three specifically, Balogun with the header, Pulisic with a 3v1 that somehow we messed up. Tillman scuffed a shot in the box. It's not again, it's not like we weren't getting in and around their box to create goal scoring opportunities, but Jamaica, though they were a little bit more willing to come press us high, once we got into that half court offense, if you will, to take a basketball term, they were very happy to pack four guys basically either on top of the penalty area or 4 to 5 guys inside the box. And as soon as we got into there, they swarmed to anybody who had the ball. And that is tough. And it does take a little bit of time to break something like that down. And we did get opportunities in front of goal. It's more frustrating that we didn't take those opportunities well enough to score.
yeah, I mean that's the thing. They did have opportunities, but I think that I mean, look, everyone has issues with a low block. It's just it is a very hard thing to break for a reason, right? It's not a great, you know, it doesn't make for entertaining soccer for sure.
I mean,
But
that's the point, right? You
right,
play this way so that you don't give
right,
up goals.
because you don't have this, the players to be able to do that. So sometimes that's how you have to play to go out and get the result you need, right? So again, in this case, I don't blame them for doing it, right? They scored in the first 30 seconds. Why the heck not would they do that? Like
Right.
again, it's a long time to do it, but they got to do what they got to do to get the result for them. So
And again, I think for me, the issue was just too often we were slow. We were making a pass, taking a touch, looking for a pass after that instead of trying to create some sort of quicker tempo when Jamaica was so, let off because they were very happy to sit very deep and let us pass the ball in front of them. Just a little bit of 1-2 combinations, even if it's manufactured, makes them think and move a little bit. And there was just none of that.
well, and that's the thing. This team does not. I've watched a lot of U.S. soccer in my life, and one of the things this group does not do a lot is have these like really like meaningful counterattacks. And so, and that's how U.S. would win matches when they just didn't
Yeah.
have, didn't have the quality. It was like they'd get a couple chances and counterattacks, and they would make the best of it. And so we don't see that with this group, but we have the players to do that, right? So, and that's a function of how you know the style of play, right? They're not looking for those opportunities. Again, they get them once in a while, but it's not on a regular basis. And and I just, I don't know how you coach that. I don't know how you integrate that, but against Jamaica, I think that would have been a little bit helpful in trying to break through because they, that 3v1. I mean, Pulisic that's one example. He just gets should one touch that. He may not make it, but he's going to
Yeah.
have he's going to have a good scoring opportunity, in that case. And so that those counters would have gotten things, I think, a little bit more open and on those attacks.
Well, and I think also you look at Balogun, his pass to Pulisic didn't really lead him into open space. It kind of just died. And that's definitely, it seemed like a field issue, but it's just one of those little things where the guys weren't fully able to maximize a situation where Jamaica maximized a couple. We got lucky on one or two else, but they definitely maximized the first opportunity they got.
Well, right, Jamaica did have. I mean, there's a breakaway where Turner's one on one with them, makes the save he needs to. There's another one Jamaica could have. I mean, that match could have been 3-0. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? At some point in that game, in the second half. So that's the key, right? This group needs to make sure they're finishing those opportunities, because sometimes you don't get too many of them, right? So you've got to make sure when you get them, you finish them, right? And against those elite teams, you're not going to get that many chances, and you've got to make the most of them.
Yeah, and it's just frustrating to watch this team continually not create a whole lot of goal scoring opportunities. But in a game like this where they're going to be few and far between because of the way that Jamaica is playing, you don't have those, a little bit more composure to take advantage of them. But you go into the breakdown 1-0. To Greg's credit, he did make changes. It wasn't like he said, "Okay, let's keep going at it." He made a change. He took Joe Scally off and he put Gio Reyna on. And while this did force Weston McKennie out to right back, which we can talk a little bit about that, I think the goal was obviously to put a better attacking player on and obviously take off a Joe Scally, who, by the way, outside of the goal that we conceded that a lot of people are crediting to his fault, which is a little harsh, he just did not have a good game. I don't think Joe Scally looked good. And honestly, didn't inspire confidence if we ever are missing Gio Reyna, or excuse me, Serginho Dest, to have to put Joe Scally in at right back.
Yeah, that's disappointing. I mean, he had a really good opportunity to just have a solid match, and he got run all over, and I just don't think he really had what he needed for whatever to figure it out. And
Yeah.
yeah, again, it's just one of those things where there's things we don't know about, and also things that we see with our eyes. But I think maybe it's an opening for a Dewan Jones, right? To maybe crack in the team if Joe isn't really playing well with his club and come Copa America. I don't know, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
I do want to take 2 seconds to just kind of comment on Wes going to right back, because I don't think that I would want this to happen frequently. Um, I I actually would have preferred maybe Tim Weah to go to the right back and kind of just like be a secondary wide option, and keep Wes in the middle. And I know people hate this, but move Gia out to the right. But because Tim's basically playing as a wing back, Gio kind of comes into more inside and hopefully creates a little bit more confusion for that team. I mean, did you love Wes at right back? I mean, I don't know.
No, no, but I mean, no, I didn't like it, but it's nice that we know we can play it. I guess is what
Yeah.
kind of what we get out of it, because here's the problem, right? Scally comes out, I think, more because he probably got a yellow card, right? Like, I think he wasn't
Oh, we
playing
forgot to
great.
mention that he got a yellow card
R-
also in the
r-
first half. This guy
Right.
had
So
a
like,
oh,
right.
bless his heart.
So like, and I'm like, great, yellow card. That's not good, because then again, coming to it, who's going to replace the situation we talked about on the last pod, about that. So that's a tough spot to be in. And this is where not having Dest is a problem. And Greg needs to figure out what he's going to do. I would assume Greg went through those scenarios of if Scally had to come out, what it was going to look like. So, I mean, it's not like you could have gone way. I mean, I think there's a lot of players that could have played that position. You could have put, we could have put Adams there.
Yeah.
But again, he was minutes restricted. So that was something that was obviously being considered. So yeah, it's not the best move, but again, I think that's almost a reason why maybe you don't bring Dest, right? Because that kind of puts you in a position where you've got to make a tough call and really play a player where you might not want to play them.
Well, let's be honest. We needed Dest against Mexico, and he certainly balled out. So I think
Yeah,
bringing
it's
him
true.
is perfectly fine. But I do understand, like, maybe you should have brought in another right back. But then again, you know, who do you leave off? Is it Christopher Lund that you leave off? I don't know. I feel like the unfortunate reality, and this is not Greg's fault necessarily, is that Joe Scally had a bad game. Did Greg prepare him well enough? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But Joe's got to. This dude is a regular starter in the Bundesliga. He should not be this easily put off in a competitive soccer game.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the key point to this. Like, again, it wasn't just Scally that he had a bad game for sure, but the whole collective team just did not gel well together, right? Until
Right.
very, very, very late, and then they finally kind of figure it out. Um, you know, but yeah, I think that's kind of the key takeaway here. Like, were they prepared for this? Again, there was players floating in. They don't. It's a small window of time to prepare for these
Hmm.
games, and that one, what was that, Thursday night? Is that Thursday
Yeah,
night?
that was the
Yeah.
Thursday night game.
Right.
Yeah.
So Thursday night. So they kind of have like 2 full days of practice, and then
Yeah, because you're not practicing on the Wednesday.
right.
You're doing at best
So
a
not even
mini
really 2 full
walkthrough.
days.
Yeah.
Not even really 2 full days, right? And the one thing I thought too, and I wonder how much of the travel and the jet lag impacted them
Yeah,
because
that's fair.
I mean, you think about that, like that's significant because usually they play that match, usually they're playing that match on like a Friday or a Saturday, and then they're playing following Tuesday, right? So I wonder how much that impacted um, the team, right? Because I mean, that takes a couple days to kind of figure it out, right? I mean,
Right.
and again, not an excuse because it's there's other teams that deal with those sorts of travel things, but it is something that I thought of.
Well, regardless of Joe having a bad game, you brought in Gio Reyna. I think you could see that he made an impact on the game. I think the problem is just that other players also seem to kind of still be in a little bit of a not lethargic, but just slow. I mean, it was just slow. And I don't know if it was urgency or just what, because I think I felt the same as you, where surely like at halftime, I'm like, well, I don't like being down 1-0, but like it's fine. We'll get the equalizer, we'll win eventually. And maybe the team kind of had that. I don't know, but you know, it just was very disheartening to see this team that we felt should beat Jamaica. I mean, the clip on the highlight reel basically has Jesse Marsh saying that this should be a 4-0 win. Now, you know, that makes Jesse look a little foolish, but he wasn't wrong to say that. The second half keeps going, and you bring in Haji and Rico, you bring in Tyler, you bring in Brendan, and I don't know if they necessarily changed much. Tyler helped a little bit with like passing the ball and recovering the ball a little quicker, but I still don't think it was good enough. And I think that's evident by the fact that the reason we scored is because we headed the ball off of one of their players.
Right. I think what I would, and I think we saw a little bit more of it in overtime and extra time was, the two strikers, right? Like you've got a pretty good quality striker pool right now, right? And so, and your winger depth is not great. So the concept of playing two strikers up top, can open things up a little bit, right? And I think that is something that we saw in extra time that allowed for opening up the match a little bit. We didn't
Mhm.
really see it too much, I think, and they're trying to find their way because they haven't played it right. Greg is so locked into his system, he's not willing to try these things until you like. There's the urgency is like they have to do something right, and then you're right. They literally the last play of regulation, like that ball is going out of bounds off Miles. It's
Yeah.
going. They're not going towards the goal, and and it
Yeah,
deflects and
it
goes
was a
in.
flick on at best.
Right.
Yeah.
And so again, I mean, talk about luck. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, my daughter was going nuts, because I was like, it's over. Like, I'm like, this is the last play. It's over. Um, and yeah, and I mean, look, you need some luck, right? You need some luck in soccer, and they definitely, you know, got that at the last possible moment. So
Yeah, it did come at the last possible moment. I do want to spend some time on uh the Tyler Adams sub, if you will, because I this was something I actually very much disagreed with Greg over because um he gets subbed out in extra time because he is on a minutes restriction. And I understand that. But I'm looking at this game going, we need a guy who can pass the ball better, who is good at helping with attacking sequences, keeping that tempo. And when I think of Tyler Adam, I don't think of a guy who's a great passer, a great offensive tool. I would have brought on Johnny. And then you hope that you get an equalizer and a game go ahead goal. And then you could bring on Tyler to kill a game off. And I know that's hindsight, but in this moment, I really thought that Johnny was the better option because he just brings you a better offensive mind and skill set.
yeah, I have some. We'll talk about the midfield in general. I would agree with that. This midfield is a very interesting group. There's a lot of talent here. We have really good depth with that. But to your point, there's these players kind of have or are developing their own kind of like slotted roles, right? You've got your uh, destroyer, you got your box to box one, and then you have your attacking midfielder, which again is what the positions are. But like, there's not a lot of variation in that. Like, there's not a lot of goals coming from the six and the eights, or even
Mhm.
goal, contributions, right? There's not a lot of that, and so to me, that's a little bit kind of concerning. Like, they all play very well where they need to, but like, there's I don't know, there's something missing there a little bit. And so we talk about MMA and you know, does Reina start? Who sits? All these type of things. It's like, but none of these, without Reina, you lose all that sort of thing because they all kind of have their role. And I had thought at one point Adams was going to be able to be more of a key pass distributor um, at the six, but to your point, we haven't seen a lot of that from him. Um, and yeah, he does certain things very well, but that midfield to me is just kind of not really doing what it needs to be doing to on the attacking side of it.
Yeah. It it definitely wasn't facilitating goals tonight until Gio came on and really until extra time, right? We get into there, we're tied 1-1 because essentially Miles Robinson headed the ball off of Corey Burke. That's what happened. He flicked it on and it goes into the back of the net. I really loved the Paramount Plus crew struggling to find the US player that scored because no one knew who to celebrate with. But you get a goal at the death. It's both lucky, but also not undeserved. If I'm Jamaica, I'm feeling really bad about it. But if I'm the US, I look at it and go, well, we had been working toward this. We just got unlucky in a couple of other situations.
Yeah, I mean, there's other scoring opportunities that they could have finished off there. I mean, it's the game, and you take those when you can get them, and um, they made the most of it at every possible second. So
Yeah. Yeah. It again, it was just very frustrating and concerning that it took us so long to break this down. And to go back to the Trinidad game at home, it took us 80 some minutes to score the first goal against them. And then we got three. Well, that's what happened in this game. We scored the game tying goal. We got then one in each period of extra time. And you mentioned this at the top, but it does take a while to break a team like this down. But eventually, Gio Reyna just shows how classy he is. I just want to mention that both goals basically come off of Gio recovering a ball high up the field. And I think that's a really important takeaway from this camp for me is Gio Reyna. I don't expect him to be a high press machine or super hard worker defensively, but if he can just understand that he can find ways to pick up loose balls and go ball hunting high up the field, that's a really good lesson for him to take back to his club situation from this camp.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that because if he can get those opportunities, they're gonna have those little counter chances with the strikers up, and he just places that ball so damn well for those strikers. I mean,
The goal to Haji on the first, the ball to Haji on the first goal. Pooley is trying to drive through. He gets it taken away. Gio recovers it, flicks it up, and then takes like one more touch with the same touch, basically. Side foots it in to Haji right in front of him to run onto. Beautiful.
yeah, yeah, and it's a great goal too by Haji. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a great
Yeah.
combination. Like you just, I mean, yeah, and so and again, to the point earlier, no other player can really do that on this team, right? There's no other player that it has that creativity in the midfield or anyone that can duplicate that. And so that's why he's so special in that for this team, and that's why he's so critical to having him play is and start.
Well, let's spend a couple of minutes on Haji because he does get the two goals that end up winning it and sealing it. He was not called in immediately, right? He was a sub. Uh, and I don't want to say that he's absolutely worked himself back into you know, the picture, but in a very crowded striker hat, right? With Balogun, I still feel like edging at the top, but Pepe, right? Sargent, who was called in, Pfock, even Vasquez, who's scoring in, Liga MX. Like, there's a lot of strikers scoring a lot for their club team. Haji may be the most prolific of all of them. He did himself a lot of favors considering who he was called in over or called in to replace.
Yeah, I mean, he I haven't seen him play much of his club, but he looked like a different player than we saw at the World Cup. And so again, bigger stage, mind you, but he really looked a lot more composed, a lot more confident in what the role he was going to be providing. And so again, both goals were just phenomenal, like in terms of what he did to get those finishes. So it is going to be interesting. I mean, I think the lack of winger depth is going to continue coming up, and I think players like Sargent, players like Wright can
Yeah.
play on those wings a little bit. So it's going to allow them a little bit more opportunity to be part of these rosters, with essentially, they can play striker, but they also can play these other positions. And that's one of the nice things about this team in general. They have a lot of that flexibility. And when you
Hmm.
get into tournaments, Copa America World Cups, you have to have that versatility. And he has that on the wing. I mean, because he scored those from the left side. I mean, as they were playing the two strikers, and that's, where he can do some damage. So it's, yeah, Haji really really, took the most of this opportunity coming off the bench, and you know, really Ian Reyna got them the win.
And, I think as you look forward, you mentioned the versatility and the winger depth kind of in the same breath. You look at Copa America being the same summer as an Olympic tournament. Really, if you're asking me who winger depth is, it's Kevin Paredes, who probably should be with the Olympic team. It's Alex Sendejas, who I don't know where he stands actually in the depth chart, but it, there's a reason why because Haji did play on the left during this. There's a reason Haji and Josh should be considered for those winger depth options. But overall, look, Haji, when he was playing, he scored 2 goals. And that's what you asked him to do. That's what he did. We get the win. We move on to the final. Let's take a quick break before we talk about that Mexico game and raising a third Nations League trophy. Okay, welcome back to Soccer for Us. I know that was a super long and exciting break for everyone. Let's now shift our attention to a much happier game, a game in which we looked more like a good team. The 2-0 win, Dos a Cero, over Mexico in the Nations League final. The second time we've defeated them in the Nations League final. We're 3-0 against them all time in this competition, and now we're on a 7-game unbeaten streak. Let's just start with that. Thomas, you and I have been watching this team for a long time. You a little bit longer than I have. We've seen Mexico be the dominant team in this rivalry, but also in this region, but most importantly against the US. But since 2000, this US team has been able to find ways to beat Mexico by this 2-0 score line and beat them in finals. And now it seems the norm and no longer an upset.
Yeah, it's there's I would say that the first until you get into like the early 90s, right? Mexico destroyed the US. They had 24 unbeaten matches against the US. Their first win, I think, for the US was in 1930, and then they didn't win again until 1991, maybe in the Gold Cup. I think I'm not positive of that, but it's really evened out. I mean, Mexico has always had better teams, in the 90s and 2000s, and the U.S. Find ways to win. But now it's kind of flipped. We've seen it flipped to go to the U.S. I mean, U.S. have had better teams at times, but we've this is a prolonged stretch, and and it's great. It's great for the fans. It's great to see that. I mean, you do kind of want. I mean, I don't know. Mexico just is. They're just not good right now. I mean, they're not good. You want them to be a little bit better, for the rivalry, but it's one of those things like the U.S. need them to be good to be pushed a little bit because they're not getting pushed really from anyone else other than their own, you know, you know, lack of, excitement because you can't just wait for the Mexico match at the end of the Gold Cup or the Nations League to kind of, you know, turn it on, right? And so I think that's where you kind of have to be careful with this, from a coaching perspective and a player perspective, is not losing that. So, but yeah, they've really since 2019, you know, uh, they had about two losses, back-to-back losses to them at the Gold Cup, and then a friendly. They've had 5 wins and 2 draws, so you know, they're rolling along, and it's great. It's great to see. It's as a fan, and you know, trust me, the players love it. They absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think it's very fair to say that this team under Greg Berhalter, since that 2019 friendly, has learned how to get up for this game. Because even in that Gold Cup final in 2019 where they lost, it was a very competitive match. And Mexico definitely was the better team at that point in time. Um, this, however, has been very much a dominant streak for the US. And even when you look at the draws, it's a draw at Azteca in World Cup qualifying and a draw in El Clasico where, you know, I don't know if you can say that any team particularly was better or worse on the night, but in matches, competitive matches, I mean, the US hasn't conceded a goal to Mexico. And I mean, we haven't conceded a goal to them in a competitive match since the first Nations League final. And that's going back to 2021, which is a very long time for this rivalry for a team to not score on the other team.
Yeah, it's an impressive run for sure. And again, the core group is pretty much the same. I mean, for competitive matches for sure. Obviously, there's a Gold Cup in there, not goal, but Kashiko in there as well. So like, but it's the same core group, which is like really setting the table on this for this group. But look, you should be beating Mexico. Like, there's no like, there's you should be beating them, and they're doing that, and that's kind of the important thing. I think Mexico in the past probably should have beaten the United States, and the United States found a way to win, right? And it doesn't, you know, doesn't always need to be the better team, but like that, these players get up for this. Like these matches. It's personal. It really is. And so I love it. I love the passion that they bring into that. But I want to see that in all matches. And I think that's kind of where I get a little frustrated at times, is where
Yeah.
that intensity is just not there, for some of these other confederation matches that matter.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair way to be after this match. Is it's great to beat Mexico. We love seeing that Dos a Cero scoreline. We love watching Tyler Adams score an absolute banger. We love watching Gio Reyna fool the entire team. We love we love Dest saucing them up. I mean, this was a very, I mean, Pulisic had moments. Pulisic almost scored again against Memo. I mean, that was a very great save from Memo Ocho in the first half on Pulisic. I will say there's been this banter kind of going on back and forth that the game itself, we didn't play all that well up until the Tyler Adams goal or something. And to that, I just say we still looked the better team. Mexico is not a bad team. So if you're telling me we didn't look good until we scored a first half goal, when we had a goal saved at point blank range, when we dominated possession, when Mexico was resigned to hoping to get a shot close, not even a shot, but hoping to get an opportunity close to the box. I think, yes, we should raise our expectations, but I don't know what you thought this game was going to be other than a normal US Mexico game where trading blows was going to happen. In this period of the rivalry, the US was a slightly better team, and it showed. We just happened to get a goal from Tyler Adams in a little bit of an unconventional way.
Yeah, first off, unbelievable. Like unbelievable goal. Like, I mean, and from honestly a player that I wouldn't expect to see it from. For 35 yards out, 40 yards. I mean,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. Um,
A lot of
I,
people were referencing the Jermaine Jones goal, but that was
y-
more believable than this one.
It was, yeah, and right, exactly. Jermaine Jones had that sort of thing, and someone had brought this to my attention. And I think it was a very valid point. We don't see a lot of goals from distance from this group, right? Like I can't. Jermaine Jones is probably the one that comes to mind. The last time we saw a banger goal in a big tournament. I can't. I mean, McKinney. I wonder. I don't know if he had one or not. You know, uh, in one of the Nation League editions, but like we don't see a lot of even shots coming out. Again, back to the whole midfield conversation from some of these players. So it's a pleasant surprise to see him taking that opportunity and just again he made it. I mean, it was moving and it was well placed. It was just awesome. But I think to the other point, the disappointment is that the last time they played in the Nations League against Mexico, they dominated 3-0. I mean, and that match wasn't even like contested, right? And so I think there may have been some comparisons to the two from.
This Mexico team is slightly better than that team.
Yeah,
Slightly.
I mean they are, but I get people have that kind of that memory in their mind saying, well, this is the same U.S. group. They're better, a better team, a deeper team, better quality.
Sure.
So I guess maybe that was maybe part of the expectation that some of the fans had going into that, and thinking back to that last match they had played against them.
We still outpossessed them 53-47, and in the first half had long periods of time where we outpossessed them. We had 6 shots on target to their 2. So while the shots were similar in total, 9 to 11 to 9, excuse me, we definitely had better chances. Um, 7 shots inside the box. Now, I know that wasn't all in the first half, but still, my point is that I think you have to understand that in a final against Mexico, domination looks different than purely scoring a bunch of goals. Because in this match, I saw a Mexico team severely frustrated by a US team that didn't seem to be buying all of their shenanigans. And to me, that was the difference in this game, and a difference that I've seen from this US team is they're not getting wrapped up. I mean, also, this is the first Mexico game, I think, in about a decade that a Mexican player hasn't tried to choke a US player. So congrats, Mexico. You've gotten better at that. It just seemed like this was a team that was focused on winning They were participating in some shenanigans from time to time, as you have to, Tyler Adams especially, but not getting caught up in it. And to me, that was the positive. Not that we're out possessing them 80-20, as some people expect to do, but like we just weren't going down to their level with that. Edson Alvarez was frustrated all night, you know? Like those are the things to me that show that this was a good performance from the team.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, and so because teams like these teams that are a better quality, they kind of sometimes know they go outside the soccer and the skill side of it, and they get into the muddy waters per se in terms of just trying to cheap shot here, get you kind of head out of the game, right? And we didn't see that impact the U.S., which is great. It's a growth thing for them, and they really had a lot of composure that sometimes in a rivalry like this can really flare up.
And, again, I think they dealt with it fairly well. And not to say that they ignored it because they responded and initiated when needed, but that's different than getting caught up in it. I mean, again, like the last time we played Mexico, Wes got his shirt ripped. There were multiple almost fights, if not actual fights. Sergio Dest got into it. So, like, this was not that game. Now, part of that is because I think Mexico does look like, a team that understands that they're not as good as we are, or better than we are anyway. And not resigned to that, but know that they have to actually play soccer a little bit to beat us now. And they're still not able to do that, by the way. But I do think that this just seemed like both a typical US Mexico match and the fact that neither team was playing fully the way they would like to, but atypical in that the US was able to kind of navigate this without getting caught in the shenanigans. Let's talk about our starting lineup though, because I think there are a couple of interesting changes. So first off, Turner and goal, that stayed the same. Dest replaces Scally at right back. Richards at center back. Tim Ream replaces Robinson at center back. Jedi on the left. Your midfield three was McKinney, Adams, Reyna. So two changes in the midfield. Musa and Tillman sit. And then up top, it was Weah right instead of Balogun and Pulisic. Now, I think basically this is about as strong of a lineup as you're going to get from this U.S. team. I think the striker, I still think Balogun is a better overall striker, but I think when you look at it and you go, well, yeah, Haji starting isn't like I'm neither upset nor happy with it. But everywhere else, and even with Tim Ream, this was the best lineup that you could play with in this game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the right thing. I always I always laugh because I'm like, it's almost too predictable, right? He scored 2 goals. Okay, he's gonna get the start. Like and I guess you're
I mean,
rewarding
yeah,
that.
but
You're
also
rewarding
Balogun
that.
wasn't great against Mexico, so that's kind of where I'm at too. Is like,
Well, right, and that's the thing. And again, but the problem with my biggest problem with Balogun is not Balogun. It's how it's just how they're running their tactics, and they're
mm,
not trying to. Greg has his stupid system that he's just cannot get over. You have to keep it simple. I think you have to play to the strength of the roster you have. So whatever that represents, you've got to play to the strengths of that. And he's not doing that. So Balogun's not getting those opportunities to find those spots. And he really, again, he hasn't been really paired. When he was paired with Reyna, they did pretty well combination wise. And so, I don't know. I don't know if in the first match they were even on the field together or not, or for a very short period of time. Um, I think it was just a short period of time because I think Reyna came in a half, and then there was like a sub at 60-something minutes. So he's
yeah,
just not getting those chances. I think he's definitely the most skilled striker we have. I just think Greg needs to find the right spots for these players to get the best out of them. And sadly, I don't think he's going to be able to do that though.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I think Balogun would have been fine in this game because this game would have suited Balogun a little bit better. He would have had space to run in behind. He would have been able to combine a little bit. There just would have been more space to do that.
Right, and
Whereas,
there
right,
was where there was also they said that he might have had a small knock too.
which is the
Uh,
other thing. Yes,
yeah, so
definitely a contributing factor. I think the real loser, if you will, here was Pepe, who didn't look great in the first game against, um, against Jamaica when he was brought on, and then didn't see the field in this game. But um, again, I think even Tim Ream, the best choice for this particular game. He's a guy who you knew was going to be needed for his passing ability. And then, I think the surprise is Tyler Adams played 45 minutes. Um, I thought that was a gutsy call from Greg, but clearly the right call.
Yeah, I think he kind of learned his lesson a little bit with that, and I think with players that are coming off injury that are minutes restricted, you kind of really have to think about where they best fit in, as well as older players, like where they best fit in, like
Mhm,
into that, and sometimes starting them actually is the better option, right? Get your 45 out of them, and they're done, right? So there's no potential, for extra time type situation where you're like, do I keep them in, risk injury, or because again, if something's going well too, you got to be careful about making those subs as well.
mhm.
So I think at this point, you kind of have a stopping point to pull them out there, and and it worked out obviously. So
Well, at halftime, Greg made another change, and this was surprising because this is 2 matches in a row he made a change at halftime, but also not surprising knowing that Tyler's on a minutes restriction. So uh Johnny comes in. First time we've really seen Johnny for a US team in a meaningful match. How would you evaluate how he played tonight?
I think Johnny did fine. I mean, it's I say it all the time. It is very hard to come off the bench and perform. Um, but I thought he did fine. I thought he fit in pretty well. I mean, it's again a tough spot for him. It's not where I really would like to have seen him in this window. I would, was hoping he was gonna, do a little bit better, but he had, you know, he made them. He did okay with his opportunities. I mean, I think he could have been a little bit better on some of his passes,
Mhm.
and touches in general. But I think, the pressure of the moment. But he he did okay. Uh, Not as great as I would have liked, but you know, it was it was just okay,
He
you know.
feels like he's not fully integrated into the system yet, and I don't mean that you know, a sarcastic, "Ooh, Greg system." I feel like he's not quite with it yet. That's not a knock on anyone necessarily. It just seems like he also hasn't been able to. I mean, shoot, we almost fought like at the beginning of this tournament, but this window we might not get him because it was rumored he got hurt in the game before. So I'm ready for him to fully be a part of this team, and I just don't know if he's like 100% there yet.
I think that's the fundamental problem that we're seeing right now. There's a group of players for some reason that can't get the integration consistently with this group, right? So they're not. I mean, international windows are short. All this time is short, right? So you've got to make the most of it. But like Sargent can't get in on it, right? He's always coming up with something. It's Carter Vickers, right? Johnny had his injury issues, right? Enough to take him off the roster. So
Yeah,
to build that continuity, to build those relationships with the players and the team is just not happening for some of these players, which is I think we're starting to see a little bit of that kind of impact the team a little bit because they need that, and they've got that chance again in June to be able to have a prolonged camp with friendlies before they head to a big tournament. So it's a big opportunity. So I don't know if you call in an extra player or not. Off the squad just to even integrate them into that, right? If they're healthy, maybe you bring in two or three other players, for
absolutely.
that piece of it, right? To just say, here, look, this is kind of our core 27 players, right? Let's, we're gonna work camp. You're gonna, we'll decide the roster, you know, headed into it, and you have a chance to win your spot, right? A little bit for some of these, players that are kind of, on the fringe. Because I mean, look at De La Torres, kind of on the outside looking in right now a little bit, like, and he's a very good player too, right? So so you've got to kind of look at the full complement of this and give them these players that
Mhm.
needed time with these their teammates, other than a you know 8-day window.
Look, you and I and Caleb have talked about there seems to be 15 to 18 guys in this group that are basically core players. Now, granted, I thought Brendan Aronson was part of that, and I think that, again, being a injury replacement on this roster shows that he's not as solid as we thought. But there's a core group of players who get it. They're in it. They're here. I think that's natural for any national team to have kind of the first ring of player. You have the nucleus, and then you have whatever. Oh gosh, I'm talking physics and I don't know well enough to talk about it. But, you have the nucleus, and then you have whatever the first ring of protons are, right? I don't know what the term is, so I apologize. But like there's a nuclear team, and then there's those immediate other guys here. And I'm hoping that Johnny can stay in that, but he does need to kind of get in to closer to the nuclear team. Same with a guy like, to an extent, a little bit like a guy like Wright, or I don't know what Joe Scally's issue is, but it just seems like you're right in that there are just guys who aren't quite getting it yet. And maybe the Copa America friendlies, that camp is a good way to get them in. Why not bring 25 guys, 26 guys to that? Because one, as you know, injuries can happen, and it would be nice to just have them here already. But two, because it's another training camp basically, with high stakes.
Yeah, and it's a pretty good window of time there.
Yeah.
And, some players might have a little bit more because of the way the season ends. I don't know if they can start camp earlier or get together earlier or not. But I think too, and this all goes back to these players not playing in Gold Cups without the first team, right?
Yes.
So, right, some of the players are there, but they're there with a CD level type depth, your lower level depth chart, so you're with if you, depending on how you look at it, are they there with the C level, B level? Doesn't really matter, but when you look at the starters and you look at the depth chart, you're not seeing those players included. I think that's kind of a problem too, because they're not even getting a chance to play with the other group. And so I think there's a continuity there that that's important, and kind of a missed opportunity, right? And so then you're just playing a bunch of MLS guys that may or may not even be on the squad. And I think it's just they're just missed opportunities, just bad management of these players. And I think you want to see more of that against those sorts of things. And again, if you're not playing, you're not gonna in those moments, you're not gonna understand what it is, because it's a different game, right? It's not club soccer. Everything is different, and the more you get to touch the ball in those tactics, in those formations with those players, the better you're going to be when your number is called, and you get thrown into the mix a little bit more. So it's another miss for Greg in this group, with not utilizing those Gold Cups to kind of look at those B level type talents, instead of looking at bringing the C and D groups, which no one really wants to see.
Well, let's bring it back to a little bit more positive and talk about Gio Reyna's goal. He obviously played a little bit deeper tonight. I think that's been another topic of conversation in the U.S. men's national team fandom of, is this the best way to use Gio? And I'll just say, look, we won 2-0 against Mexico, so I don't know. Was it great? No. Is this a way to use Gio to get him on the ball more? Yeah. Have him play a little bit deeper and take the ball from the back line. But he does get a goal. It comes after a set piece, or a cross is kind of cleared. Well, not cleared, then cleared, but it goes right to him. And he just takes a nice hit. He settles himself, jumps, and basically, kind of just jumps into his shot and puts it past Memo Ochoa, who I think probably saw it a little late. That's why he got beat to his near post. But I love seeing Memo getting beat like that. And look, Gio hasn't scored or produced a whole lot for the U.S. until recently, because he hasn't been playing a whole lot. But it's nice that he got 2 goals or 2 assists the first game. In this final, he gets a goal. This is the Gio we've been wanting to see for this U.S. men's national team.
Yeah, it's a beautiful one touch. Buries it near post, and yeah, he's dangerous, right? He's a dangerous. He can distribute. He can put it in the back of the net. He's a very dangerous, very young player still, right? Like, and that's very exciting, to have that prospect out there because he needs to be on the field. I mean, there's no debate about it. I mean, he's not, great standing with his current club right now. That doesn't matter, right? That doesn't matter. He's a special talent that needs to, be in this group because we've seen how the team performs with him without him there and how he performs with him there. So, and I think that's a very telling, uh, and it's very significant, right? Because again, I'll say it before and I'll say it again. There's no other player in this pool right now that can do what Gio can do.
Yeah. Yeah, and we saw that this window. I mean, he unlocked the Jamaica defense almost single-handedly twice. He helped facilitate the possession we had against Mexico very well and was one of the reasons why we were able to withstand a lot of their high press. He is unique. He is, if not the most important, one of the three most important players in this squad right now. And it's nice to see him get rewarded with the goal like this. That said, I think the 2 assists he got against Jamaica were better in terms of, oh, this is what Gio can bring.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing. He does it all. I love the assists more from him. I mean, great. Please score goals too, Reina. But like,
I'm not
his
mad at he scored a goal. I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
these
But
assists were special.
right, and we've seen him do that. From time, not from time to time. We've seen him do it quite a bit, right? Given those opportunities, he can just hand those strikers that ball in the right spot for them to just finish it. And that's what we need, from our midfielders, especially especially ones on the attacking side of it. So
Uh, Last piece of this game, just want to run through some of the subs. Balogun comes on for right, and then Musa on for Gio. And then Greg closes out the game with subs. Brendan and Malik come on for Weah and who did it come on for? Pulisic? No. Hold on. Where are my notes? Yeah, Pulisic. Sorry. Weah and Pulisic come off. Um, I just wanted to mention them. I don't know if Balogun looked particularly better or worse than right. I thought the subs, though, for the most part, made a whole lot of sense, and I want to give Greg some props for subbing guys when it was clear we needed some substitutions.
yeah, the subs are fine in there. I think yeah, you got a really good balance of players on this squad. I think the important thing is to make sure Greg is communicating what their role is going to be, right? So that they
Yeah.
know going into these games, going to these tournaments, that this is the primary role. Something happens, this is a secondary role, and don't pull another Gio Reyna, right? Be like, well, you're not going to really play much in this tournament. Like, tell these guys you're going to need to be ready. You never know when your numbers are going to be called, right? Like, that's how you coach. That's how you motivate, right? Not like, yeah, you're not going to really, how much of a role in this tournament. Like, that's crap. Like, I'm bitter about that because it's really, it's not a tone to set, right? If you're on the roster, you should be expecting to
Yes.
have a chance to impact any matches you get into. So um, that's the
Yeah.
messaging, and that's what that management needs to be doing, for this group. And I think he did that well in this match.
Well, we won 2-0. Dos a cero again. It's important to celebrate beating Mexico. It's important to celebrate winning a third Nations League. I think there's still some debate on where this actually stands in the hierarchy of trophies to win. It's obviously not a World Cup, and it's obviously not a Copa America, which is the tournament that we have next. So the question that I want to end with is, what does winning this tournament actually mean right now?
I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel like it's a false sense of security a little bit, right? I mean, you won it, you did it, but it wasn't really. It was kind of you know, an ugly way against Jamaica, and an improved way against Mexico. But still, it's like, do you think you're rolling headed into this? Like, you've got to be 100 times more prepared, heading into this other tournament. So I think like celebrate it, enjoy it. It's definitely, where we're seeing the 18 players play for these CONCACAF tournaments at the moment. So I think that's, what's expected. But, I really think that they need to be a heck of a lot better headed
Mhm.
into Copa America, with this group and be positioned to for that deep run because I'm just concerned because I just don't see that urgency. I mean, the way the schedule lines up is very favorable for the U.S. in terms of kind of the buildup. They've the friendlies, and then they're not playing Uruguay till the third match, like types of things. So I think you can build into it, but you can't back into that, right? You can't always be like reactive. You've got to be proactive, and I think that's the problem I have with Greg. He might make good moves, but it's like I don't know, like he's like, well, we'll just try to see if it works, then we'll make the other move. It's like, well, maybe make the other move to start and see what it could have provided, as opposed to being like, all right, now it didn't work, and then we'll do this. And so it's just a very reactive. Greg 2.0 has not been great, and so that's kind of, I guess, my frustration with this in general and my concern because I think this group is very talented. I just don't think we're getting the best out of them.
Well, our good friend Caleb predicted in his predictions and resolutions segments on this here podcast at the beginning of this year that we would have a good Nations League and have false confidence heading into Copa America. I will say that I don't think that the fan base has false confidence because of everything you just said. This feels a little bit like meeting expectations. And while we can celebrate that the expectations were met, this is not the end goal for this year specifically. The goal should be to win a Copa America on home soil. And this is a step toward that because if Greg looks at this as job well done, then I'm going to be concerned because there were obvious flaws in both games, both tactically, personally, and overarchingly. And to me, that is the thing that this coaching staff needs to look at is this is a benchmark that we have hit. The next one, how do you get there? And they've struggled to move from great CONCACAF team to actually good soccer team in the global scale. And that is what the summer is for. So don't do not get overconfident from this. I'm speaking to all the fans who are listening because neither Jamaica nor Mexico are the quality of team that we are going to have to beat to make a run at the Copa America, right? Like, yes, we may. That's unfair. Mexico is a team that you have to beat in a Copa America match, right? Like that is a team that the type of team you will see in a knockout rounds. But we know we can beat Mexico. The question is, can we beat a team of that quality that's not Mexico? And so I'm with you. Like that, this is just expectations met. How do we grow from here? How do we take this and extrapolate it and improve and alter to be better once Copa America starts and we have to actually play some different competition?
Right, and
Um,
I would say don't get too confident, even if we happen to play well against, you know,
Bolivia, yeah.
not Bolivia, but no, in the friendlies, right? Headed
Mm,
into it, right? Like, don't get too confident
yeah,
there because again, I don't expect Brazil's going to run out their a game plan right there, in general, right? Maybe they will, but I just think they're going to be both, Colombia and Brazil. I think are just kind of use it, for that. And so don't get any false sense of security from that either, because no matter how they play, one way or the other, don't overreact or uh, on either side of it, right? So I think you have to really, you know, it's again these tournaments build right, and that's gonna kind of be the benchmark's gonna be kind of set differently, I think, because you are seeing some top tier friendlies before it.
well, that's the next thing we have is those friendlies. We have, I think that's an unfortunate reality is we have 2 whole months off almost 3 whole months off before we play again. Obviously a lot of club ball going on, and a lot of our boys are positioned to win league titles or other things, be it cup titles, whatever. But we don't get to talk about the U.S. men's national team again until June, which kind of sucks. Um, so I appreciate you, Thomas, being here to talk with me about it right now and celebrate beating Mexico, celebrate winning the Nations League, but also, as you said, reflecting on the totality of this tournament and how in the 4 games we played, a lot of concerns in each of them. But that said, to end on that positive note, we did win. We did beat Mexico. Mexico is absolutely mudded. They cannot get it over on us. And it's fun to be in this moment in time beating Mexico a lot.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm super always happy to beat Mexico. You know, and bigger things to come for this group, and you know 70 some odd days from now we'll be talking about the friendlies headed into Copa America. So it's exciting. It's a big tournament and with big stakes.
Well, everyone, you can follow Thomas on Twitter at USKeeper. He has some great stats based and just historically based content, as well as great opinions on both the men's and women's national teams. So make sure you follow him. Again, that's at USKeeper. You can follow this show at Soccer for Us Pod on Twitter and support it at buymeacoffee.com/soccer for us pod. Next up, we will bring you some quick reactions on the She Believes Cup roster. If you're not aware, I'll be very much attending these games. If you're in the Atlanta area, their tickets are at 39,000 ish, so they are going quickly. But apparently, according to JT Batson, they have opened the 3rd level, so tickets are available. So if you're in the Atlanta area, strongly encourage you to come down and watch USA Japan. Everyone else, though, thanks for listening. I'm Bart. I'm out.